My name is Raj Sharma. I work at GSK and I head up a team on inhaled delivery systems. And what I would like to do today is to share with you some data around device differentiation comparing Diskus with Turbuhaler. Now, there are many factors that will determine the amount of drug that is delivered from an inhaler to the lungs of a patient. There are clearly the pharmacological properties of the molecule itself. But then there are the properties of the inhaler. Its resistance, in other words, the inspiratory flow or effort that a patient has to achieve in order to aerosolize drug from the inhaler. Also, its ability to deliver a consistent dose across a range of disease severities. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, is the willingness and the ability of the patient to use the device and to use it correctly. In this in vitro laboratory experiment, we evaluated the resistance of the Diskus compared with the HandiHaler and the Turbuhaler. We see from this data that the device resistance of the Diskus is lower compared with Turbuhaler. This suggests that patients will require less inspiratory flow, less inspiratory effort in order to aerosolize drug from the inhaler compared with the higher resistance Turbuhaler device. We have also evaluated the inspiratory flow that patients are able to generate when inhaling through the Diskus. We studied a range of different patient groups, including asthmatics, COPD patients, and asthmatic children. We see from the data that across the range of different patient groups, they are able to achieve a relatively high inspiratory flow through the Diskus, suggesting that it is a relatively low to moderate resistance inhaler device. We have tested the Diskus compared with the Turbuhaler in an in vitro setting to assess the dose delivery characteristics from the two inhalers. We see from this data that the dose delivered as a percentage of the label claim is close to 90% for the Diskus across flows from 30 to 90 litres per minute. In contrast, the dosing is lower and more variable with the Turbuhaler, and even at 90 litres per minute, the dose delivered is only around 60% of the label claim. We have also evaluated the Diskus and the Turbuhaler using real-life patient flow profiles from COPD patients. Once again, we see a consistency of dosing which is close to the label claim across the variety of COPD patients that we evaluated, including those that generate relatively low inspiratory flows through to those that generate relatively high inspiratory flows. In contrast, we see with the Turbuhaler, there is a dose dependency which is based upon the flow rate. Now we move on to the key findings around the ability of patients to use devices correctly. In this study by Matthew Mollimar's group, he evaluated the proportion of patients that make at least one critical error and compared a variety of different devices. A critical error being an error that is likely to result in no or minimal amount of drug delivered from the inhaler. What we see is that the proportion of patients making at least one critical error is relatively high with the Turbuhaler, whereas it is relatively lower with the Diskus. Finally, device preference is also important. If a patient prefers a device, they are more likely to use the inhaler. In this study, we see that 2/3 of patients or more preferred Diskus overall compared with Turbuhaler. And when we look at the data in more detail, the preference includes reasons around simplicity of use, the dose counter, and ease of teaching. In conclusion, the Diskus is a relatively low to moderate resistance inhaler, which provides consistent dosing, which is close to the label claim, across a range of different flow rates and disease severities. This is in contrast with a Turbuhaler, where the dose delivery is more flow dependent. Importantly, the Diskus is associated with fewer critical errors than Turbuhaler and is a device that is preferred by patients. Thank you.